start off with the very serious story of the verdict in the fatal shooting of Chris Kaba by police. And the Sun makes the point that the jury took very little time to clear the police officer, who's a Met firearms officer, Martyn Blake, cleared unanimously and very quickly. The Mirror says gun cop cleared. There we go. And then the Times has anger on all sides as Met officer cleared of murder. I'll just show you some footage of what happened, which was released yesterday. We won't show the shooting, obviously. It's quite chaotic, but essentially you can see here that you have Kaba's car, and it's an Audi Q8. And if you run it, you can see it's moving away from the police car where the camera is, but it then gets boxed in. And at this point, the police then move to the side. You see Kaba there, he's still alive. There'll be a flash frame in a moment. He moves forwards to try and get away. He then reverses. There is a flash at the moment he's shot, which is coming up. And that was it. And now you see on the body cam of the shooter was just shown, Kaba is now dead in the car. Very chaotic. And I know what we say, it had been linked to a shooting in Brixton the previous night. He was evading the police. He did not, crucially, have a gun. Mr. Blake was then put on trial for murder, denied intending to kill. He said he genuinely thought a colleague would die. After the verdict, the Met Police Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, warned about how the case could impact policing in the future.
Sergeant Blake made a split-second decision on what he believed was necessary to protect his colleagues and to protect London. The jury decided that was an honestly held belief and that the force used was reasonable. I worry about the lack of support officers face for doing their best. But most of all, I worry for the public. The more we crush the spirit of good officers, the less they can fight crime.
Chris Kaba's family, though, said yesterday it was a painful verdict, painful proof that our lives are not valued by the system. There were peaceful protests following the news, where campaigners also shared their anger, describing Kaba's death as an execution and the verdict as a failure for those affected by police violence.
Who wants to live in a society where the police can shoot unarmed people in the forehead and be faced with no consequences? Martyn Blake didn't spend but a second in a handcuff, not a second in a jail cell, whilst our community, our youth, are locked up en masse.
It's a very, very tricky story and tragic as well, Danny.
Yeah, first and foremost, very, very sad that somebody's lost their life. But I think, for me, I come out in favour of the police force in this. It's a very, very difficult situation that he was put in that moment. None of us can say what we would do. We can all take the moral high ground. We can all say what we think we would do, but we're not in that situation. These are highly trained police officers. Firearms police are some of the most highly trained that we have. They understand the consequences of what pulling that trigger means. They understand that that can mean taking a life. They understand that every time they pull that trigger, no matter what, there will be an investigation. They don't take
more than, I mean, this was
but they don't
murder
take this
charge.
And this is my point. They don't take that lightly. This is very, very similar to what we put our soldiers through, you know, and we expect them to make split-second decisions in a fraction of a moment.
Okay, the Tory leadership candidate Robert Jenrick has been criticised in some quarters because he said the police officer was a hero. What do you think of that?
That is going too far, and that is pure electioneering on Jenrick's part, who was a man. Somebody said if he was a stick of rock, he'd have ambition all the way through it. So let's discount what he said, and I think it was not helpful to the situation, because it is a very difficult situation. It's difficult for the police, it's difficult for the community, it's difficult, obviously, for the family, and obviously our condolences, you know, would go out. The thing is, it's much more nuanced than just that. Because for years, it's only recently, you know, not so long ago, that the Met was branded institutionally racist. Now, there have also been other cases which are not. You know, we look at the Sarah Everard's killer. I'm not going to name him because he doesn't need publicity. Where we don't trust the police in the way we do, and there are certain communities who trust the Met less, and so you have to balance that up. But there are questions to be asked. The police were following this car because it had a number plate that was associated with a shooting,
a gun crime the previous day.
The previous day. Now we don't know. Was this ever proved? Did the jury, were they told in court whether this was in fact that he did have it?
But that wouldn't affect their thinking, would it? Because all they can go on is what the intelligence was for that particular officer. I was interested to see that he's gone back on duty. Danny, what do you think of that?
But why not? He's been exonerated.
Well, listen to the voices from that community. How isn't that just...
And it is very, very tragic. But equally, if I get stopped by 2 or 3 police cars and someone sticks a gun in my window...
You do not drive forward.
The last thing I'm doing is driving into that police car and then reversing back into another one and trying to escape. The first thing I'm doing is panicking and just freezing in a moment, unless why am I trying to escape that situation?
There is that. And by the way, if he escapes at 100 miles an hour on the streets of London, he will kill someone.
No, and I completely agree with that. I completely agree with that. And the family saying, well, yes, he was about to be a father. That is sadly irrelevant. There's nothing to do with that. That makes things more emotive. You just have to try and look dispassionately at the facts, and say, because the implication was that it was some kind of racist execution in a way. That's what the words were being used. Now, did the police know that he was black, or did they? They have the details. The license plate will come up and they'll get the details of the car. Do they know from that he's black? You can't say. It's only when they stopped him that why would that make a difference?
I'm conscious that we're 3 white people discussing it here, so it's never ideal.